Since we all briefed just a little while ago, we began excavating the site that I talked to you about. We have unearthed what we believe to be the partial remains of Tricia Todd. We have stopped our efforts and will wait until the light of day. Forensic anthropologist Dr. Haney from Florida Gulf Coast University has agreed to come over and will help us as we continue this process tomorrow. Keep in mind that we have not positively identified the remains and we are not able to do so by just looking, so it will take a DNA before we know positively of what we have.
Can you tell us what conditions these remains are in?
Yes, they're in an advanced stage of decomposition.
So that's kind of my next question. Is there your issue with identifying it? Is it the decomposition that's the issue, or is it something that perhaps Steven Willliams did to her that's the issue?
It is both. It is the fact that we have to do DNA, and we only have partial remains.
Sheriff, can you describe the nature of the grave for us?
Yeah, it's really nothing more than a fairly simple hole. I would say maybe 3 feet. The body was in a container. The container was probably 3 feet, maybe 2.5 feet high, and then a couple feet below that was in the ground, a couple feet below that.
This seems to, and I may be jumping to conclusions, cast further doubt on his story of she fell and hit her head.
Yeah, I would agree with that. His question was, does it cast doubt on his story about her falling and hitting her head? And yeah, it clearly does.
Does this also give you more evidence that this was perhaps the premeditated murder that you were speaking of earlier?
I'm not a prosecuting attorney, but and your question was, do I think this leads us towards believing it was premeditated? Yeah, I think that. Yeah, I would say that based on what we're finding out there now, I would believe that this was probably more likely than not premeditated.
Sheriff, just to go over, for viewers who are just tuning in, what have you found and why are you stopping for now?
We have found a container with the partial remains of who we believe to be Tricia Todd. It's dark, and we want, in the abundance of caution, now that we know we're at the right site, we have stopped for the night, and we will reassemble here tomorrow early. We have a forensic anthropologist, Dr. Haney from the West Coast, who's coming over, and she will assist us. And we may have more than one site that we have to excavate.
Why do you say that?
Because we only have partial remains.
What does that mean? Was her body in pieces?
Your question is, was her body in pieces? The answer is yes. The question is, what time are we starting tomorrow? Early, first light. We'll have our teams out here. We're obviously staying here through the night to protect the integrity of this crime scene. We have a tent that's up. We've done everything we can today, and going any further through the night would risk us missing evidence. So we'll be much better off in the light of day with all of our assets in here and fresh detectives, fresh team coming in here.
When you say you found partial remains, not to be gross, but what have you found?
The question was, what have we found? I'm going to have to wait until there's a medical examiner. I mean, I have a theory. It appears to us, but I'm not going to speculate on what we found.
Sheriff, can you speak to whether acid might have been used in this homicide or the cover-up?
Yeah, the question is, would I speculate as to whether there was acid? There was clearly a large amount of fluid in the plastic container. I think that it would be safe to speculate that there was some kind of acid in there. That is not certain, but I would suspect it's likely that it was.
So you're saying that there might be a second scene. Do you know where else you might need to search?
The question is, I'm saying that I think there's a second scene. Do I know where to search? Well, clearly we'll start here tomorrow in this area, and we'll start where we have the grave or the burial site, and we'll start a circumference from there and do a grid search as far as we think is reasonable, in hopes that the additional remains are somewhere in the proximity of where we are right now.
So the fact that the ex-husband did not disclose in entirety where all the remains are, does that affect the nature of the plea deal?
Excellent question, which was, does the fact that we don't have all the remains negate the plea deal? I've begun discussions, our detectives have begun discussions with the state attorney's office. I'm not an attorney. I suspect that might be the case, but I don't know the answer to that.
To go off that question, based on what you find, is there any chance, and I'm not a legal expert, that the charge of second-degree murder could change based on what you find?
The question is, based on what we're finding now, could the charge of second-degree murder change? Can we charge differently? The answer to that is most likely not, because of the plea deal. I think based on your question, you know, is the position that we only have partial remains, does that negate the plea deal? And I don't know the answer to that.
So in theory, if the deal is broken, or if they have to break the deal, could you then go back and recharge him with first degree?
Yeah. The question is, if the deal was off the table because of what he did, could we charge him with first degree? I don't know the answer to that. I think that's something the state attorney is going to have to answer.
We saw you meeting with the family. What did you tell them?
The question is, I met with the family, and what did I tell them? I had to tell them what I just told you, that we did not find all the remains.
What's next?
The question is, what's next? We will be out here tomorrow morning, and we'll stay until every square inch of what can reasonably be searched has been searched. Clearly, we're not satisfied with what we have tonight. This was a wrinkle, hurdle that we could never have anticipated, and the family, and with our agreement, entered into a negotiated plea so that we could come out here and recover Tricia Todd's remains and give her back to the family for a proper burial. And that deal was not kept, in my opinion, by the defendant in this case. And so it yet remains to see what the position of the court will be.
You're going to go back and ask him?
Absolutely. His question is, am I going back and ask him? Absolutely. We're going back and contending that this was not the deal that was made, and that that deal should be off the table.
You're going to go back and ask Steven Willliams to show you where the rest of the body is?
Absolutely. The question is, are we going back to ask him? You can bet we are.
You seem, don't let me put words in your mouth, frustrated, angry, ticked off? How would you describe what's going on right now with you?
Your question was, I appear angry or ticked off? Yeah, we're probably streaming live, so I'm not going to tell you how I feel. Once again, you all have been very gracious, and I know it's been a long night for you. I'm sure the mosquitoes do to you what they do to us, but thank you so much for your patience. And again, my heart goes out to the Todd family. They're here, and they've been with us every step of the way. We do not act independently of the family's wishes. Thank you all so much. Good night.
Thank you.